Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard each Wednesday here on WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest. She is Melissa Steginus. Is that close enough?
That's correct. Ace it.
Okay. Melissa, as you'll see, is a productivity and wellness specialist and author of a book called Everyday Mindfulness. And Melissa, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook land. Okay.
Hello.
Great. And Melissa, I should mention, she's a productivity and wellness specialist, an author of a new book, which we'll be talking about. Now, let me put it up here. It's called Everyday Mindfulness, 108 Simple Practices to Empower Yourself and Transform Your Life. Melissa's motto, I love this, is that your time and energy are your most precious resources. Her work blends time, task, and energy management to help you work effectively, live intentionally, and spend your precious resources in what matters to you. And the question, Melissa, I always ask people is that you grew up, you said, in Canada? You're from this area? Right. And from Vancouver Island?
That's right.
Okay. And when you were a little girl growing up in Vancouver Island, Canada, did you always know you wanted to be this author and productivity expert?
That's a great question. I grew up as the only child of a wonderful mother who's a clinical psychologist. So I knew that there were a lot of possibilities out there. I knew I wanted to have meaningful conversations and learn about how people tick. And so initially I went into psychology and then I got a degree in social work. But ever since I was around 5 years old, I always had a dream to be a published author. I just wasn't sure what I wanted to publish. And now I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity through this book that you so lovely mentioned, that I can blend my expertise and my interests in a way that allows me to have fulfilled that dream while also contributing to the people around me.
I think, right, this is your second book. Is that correct?
That's right.
What was the first book?
The first book I self-published, and that book was called Self-Care at Work, How to Boost Productivity and Do More of What Matters to You. And that book was really geared toward blending self-care and productivity, obviously. Whereas this book, Everyday Mindfulness, I worked with a publisher, and the intention behind this book is really to take mindfulness from being kind of a flowery, elusive term to give it a down-to-earth, practical approach in a way that easily integrates into, even the busiest schedule.
And talk about the writing process. I always find it interesting when I speak to authors. Is this something that you do like every day, or do you sit down, talk about living your life, by design? Do you sit down every day and get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and write for an hour and a half? How do you do it?
I'm very aware, like you said, energy management is a big part of the work that I do in addition to time and task management. So I do get up early. I like to kind of carpe diem and be up and doing something for myself and honing my craft before, the noise and the chaos of everyday life and all of the other roles and responsibilities. But I actually don't have an everyday practice where I have to write X number of words per day. Although if I did, I would definitely measure it by number of words versus amount of time per day. I think result focused versus time specific. But this book specifically was a labor of love over the course of a number of years. The biggest or most focused chunk of time did require me to, and I chose to spend, a good couple of hours every morning, outlining and going through each practice and just sort of chipping away slowly, but 5 days a week, certainly a regular practice, but even for a shorter amount of time.
It's funny because it ties into one of your beliefs, and that is, I know you try to help people, I like how you describe it, to live, to kind of plan out your life, to live by design versus by default. What do you mean by that?
Yes, so that's a great question and a great term. I help people create frameworks in their personal and professional lives that lead them to work and live by design versus by default. And that means with clarity, with intention, with ease, and then effectiveness. Because by design means, living or working with greater intention. That's a big keyword of mine and a core belief of mine. And intention really means done on purpose. And that's what I mean by saying, work and live by design. It's being attentive, taking control and responsibility, being focused on a clear outcome, and then really being more present and engaged in all facets of your life. And alternatively, by default would look far more reactive and unintentional, so more passive, feeling a bit disempowered or stuck or frantic. I think that working and living as a whole by design with that added intention is incredibly empowering and transformative, hence the subtitle of the book being about empowering yourself and transforming your life, because there are just this ongoing series and list of benefits when you really start to pay attention and approach what you do every day with a little bit more attention and intention.
It's funny. I have something I say to people. Most people say, like, have a good day. You've heard that expression. It's very popular. But I reject that, Melissa, in the sense that I'll tell people, back to your point, make it a good day.
I like that.
And I say that even make it, do you celebrate Thanksgiving there?
Yes, but it's a month earlier.
Right, that's right. The same thing too. Rather than have a good Thanksgiving, have a happy Thanksgiving. Hey, Melissa, make it a great Thanksgiving, But it's just, but isn't that similar to what you do? You're telling people you have control over your life as opposed to just accepting it.
Absolutely. Yes. You have such a capacity, right? Like these inner resources that we have for our own, for the ability to make choices in our life that really, allow you to steer yourself in a different direction and to pivot. I always say that, I have my motto, right? Your time and your energy are your most precious resources. But I also say that you are the active creator of your life. Like we are kind of in this fun balance or juggle between we are both, the artist and the clay. We are both the ones who are experiencing our lives, but also simultaneously creating that. And coming back to that recognition, that awareness that we hold that power, I think is just incredibly liberating, because now, you're respecting more the relationship you have with yourself and also with the world around you and the people around you.
Help somebody make that shift if they've never done it or never thought about it. In other words, it's a great concept, but I got to believe a lot of people never realized, they had this in their power. How do you help somebody?
Yeah, I think the first few steps are certainly, they feel like the most important and sometimes the hardest, the most impossible. And I have a kind of 3-pillar approach that I try to stick to, which is purposeful, personal, and practical. So I want people to learn and do what works for them. And I think a key part of beginning to make that shift into by design versus maybe what some of us are used to, which is by default, it really begins with asking effective questions. That's a big part of my work, especially in the beginning. And it's a big piece of the book of Everyday Mindfulness. Every practice comes with reflection questions, just so that you're starting to think about, what is my intention with this? What is the purpose? What do I want the outcome to be? And it kicks off this sort of 4-step process, which is by no means linear, that I try to move people through and have used myself. And it spells out code, which is great because I love acronyms. And so clarify, outline, design, and execute. Those are sort of the 4 steps, I guess you could say, because it's so tough to execute, to make, real, meaningful, lasting decisions when you're not so clear on what you want. I think so often we look back on, the last week or year or decade, and we think, ooh, that really didn't go as I anticipated or as I expected, right? But at the beginning of that time frame, perhaps we hadn't actually set an expectation. And so it really, I think, begins with asking effective questions and setting those expectations that lead to clarity, that help you outline what it is you want and what the steps are in order to move in that direction. And so that you can then design your life around that, around your mission, around your values, around your priorities, so that you're really doing things, you're spending your time and your energy, you know, those precious, precious resources that make you who you are, on the things that really matter to you and that bring you joy and fulfillment and meaning.
And I'll use that as kind of a perfect segue into your book, because I'll just hold it up for people. I have an everyday mindfulness. So the beauty of the book is not only in the book itself, but the subtitle. And I want to ask you about the subtitle. 108 simple practices to empower yourself and transform your life. And the question I have for you, Melissa, is how do we come up with 108?
Right. So there is a lot of significance around the number 108. And I think over the years, you know, I've looked at past notebooks and seen old pages of like I'd numbered to 30 and then maybe 365. And I wanted to settle somewhere in the middle so that, you know, we all have busy lives. We, outside of COVID, like to go on vacation, now maybe a staycation, but it's nice that, you know, without 365 days, if you want to take a little break, you can come back to the next day. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but it's enough. There are enough days that you can really pick and choose what works for you, and then always come back to the practices that really resonate. But I can share some of the extra special pieces around the numerical value of 108. And so I was doing some research, obviously, in figuring out the number, and I found the diameter of the sun, for instance, is 108 times the diameter of the earth. And the diameter of the sun multiplied by 108 equals the miles between sun and earth. So you have all these interesting kind of like cosmic intergalactic coincidences, I guess. And therefore, I mean, in certain belief systems and religious beliefs as well, 108 is a very meaningful and sacred number. And so I just thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then I found some more mathematical and geometric coincidences as well. And even the visual symbolism behind the number, right? You have 1, which is sort of like ultimate truth, right? And then you have 0, which can be associated with like wholeness, right? You have a full circle, or the kind of emptiness that's associated with nirvana in Buddhism. And then of course 8 is infinity. And so it's kind of a funny it's a funny symbolism, and it's a funny significance around the number, because the book is really designed. I did it in a way that it's spiritually, or it's not spiritually exclusive. Like it's spiritually irrelevant almost. You get to decide the practices that resonate with you. There's a practice about defining your own spirituality. So I didn't want the book to be, you know, for there to be a clear line between that and, let's say, Buddhism or ideas of meditation that so many people equate with mindfulness, right? And fairly so. But I wanted this to just be a little bit more accessible and more related to just intentional living. Yet still, with the significance of 108, there's certainly this element of kind of something greater. And I thought, all right, I'll just roll with it. It's the number that seemed most fitting. It's really easy. There are 6 sections, so it's easy. You can divide 108 by 6, you get 18. So there were a number of different coincidences and conveniences, and I just thought, all right, there's enough here. This is the number.
In reading the book, I don't know if there's a definitive answer to this, but can it be read by just skipping around, or do you recommend starting page 1 and going up to the end of the book? What do you think?
I would say, and this is in the introduction as well, I kind of give a little note to the reader that I would say to go through chronologically. I mean, that's how it's intended. Yet I understand that, you know, so there are 6 elements, right? Physical, emotional, rational, spiritual, occupation, and network. And I understand that some people might be most interested in injecting a little bit more mindfulness into their relationships and communication. And therefore they would jump straight to perhaps the network section. And I would say certainly there's space for jumping around, but maybe you would start at the beginning of, you know, the section that you're most interested in focusing on, and then move through chronologically within that section, just because some practices do build on previous practices, and I kind of lay the groundwork for, you know, day 91 in day 86, right, for instance. So there's space, right? I like to empower the reader to have their own journey, and I'm just here to provide this sort of format if you want a little bit more guidance.
Well, it's funny you said that, because yeah, as I was preparing for tonight's show, I'm skipping around a little bit, and I got to 93. I said, nope, you have to look at 91. You know, so your point. But if I can share, Melissa, maybe just kind of at random, a couple of things I picked up, and I'll have you describe them in great detail. But as you'll see, as Melissa describes this is like just really good stuff that kind of you may have thought about, but never put it down in writing, or never. And one of the things I think you encourage people to do is when you read the book, they should take notes in it or answer the questions, actually write them out.
Yes, in the book.
So you actually make us work. But and it's funny because each of the questions are similar to the ones you talked about earlier. You know, they kind of guide you through the process. But I'll just skip around a little bit. But just and I love the titles, by the way. How did you come up with the titles for each chapter? Was that hard?
It was a lot of just try and test it out. I mean, I've gone through the book, I've done the practices in my own life. And so it was sort of just adjusting based on what resonates with me, what I think resonates with folks who are interested in mindfulness, but, you know, who aren't, you know, everyday active meditators for an hour a day, or even for those who are, right? I'm trying to make it down to earth, practical, accessible. So my number one priority was really like nothing too flowery, you know. I just wanted it to be like a bit more concrete than that. And other than that, it was just trial and error and two very fantastic editors.
But and it's funny also you said that, because my wife is a daily meditator, and you know she kind of saw me reading it. She picked it up. She leads a meditation class, and she thought maybe she could use some of this. But I said, well, that's okay, but I'm not a meditator, but I love, you know, stuff you have. And just for example, if you want to look at it with me on day 16, I love the title. I kind of think it's something we all believe in: go the extra mile. And if you describe, if you would, Melissa, people don't have it in front of them, but how you do this, you have a purpose, and I think you have right below the purpose, you call it practice.
Yes.
Kind of walk people through what you do in saying go the extra mile. What do you have them do?
Sure. Absolutely. It's a great example. So like you said, every day, every practice is structured similarly or the same. So every day will begin with a purpose, because I think, and we often lose this as adults, but I mean, think about yourself in like a high school math class and you put your hand up and you're like, why do I need to know this? What is
Right.
the significance? Like what for? And, or so what, right? And I wanted to start each day with that so that, you know, or you have an idea, or, you know, an idea of someone else's perception of, why does this matter? How could this benefit me? So the purpose for going the extra mile, it talks about getting out of your comfort zone. And of course, this can feel daunting or even at times impossible, right? But starting with small choices can help you ease your way through discomfort and into growth, because you've got to move through discomfort to get to growth. And so you might even find that the extra mile isn't even as far as you thought. So a bit of encouragement there as well. And then of course the practice right underneath is just I like to keep it simple, right? Some of them are 5 minutes, some are 10, 15. For the most part, I try to keep it minimal so that, you know, you can easily integrate this into your life right at the beginning of your day, at lunch, at the end. So for this example, search for opportunities today. And again, you got to do a bit of work. You got to search for those opportunities to make it a good day, like you say, Blaine. So search for opportunities today that will push you slightly out of your comfort zone. Commit to doing one simple thing today and then act on that choice. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Leave your phone behind while you run an errand, or go outside and run a mile if you're taking it literally. Remember that even small ripples can make waves. And then there are three.
Just on that too, even as you describe it, I just love hearing what you have to say about it. Because again, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. You know, it doesn't, like, wasn't that a great example you just gave, that you're trying to get more exercise? You know, just do it. And of course, you don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to spend a lot of money for a gym membership. But just if you took steps every day rather than walk, rather than take the elevator, simple thing. I'm sorry, I cut you off. You want to talk about the questions you
No,
raised?
that's great. So I'll talk about the reflection questions, but just to build on that, I like to say you don't have to, revolutionize your life in
Right.
order to feel like you've made revolutionary changes. Like the meaningful, lasting changes are those small 1% incremental changes that you're doing on a regular basis. And I think the part of the premise of this book too is just to get you in the habit of looking for those opportunities, again, by design, right, versus by default. I want you to be looking for opportunities to practice making the changes that you want to make, or at least to put yourself in a position where you're more likely to make those changes. Because I mean, once you're in a new situation, you're going to do something. So to speak to that, the reflection questions, because again, the book is almost structured to be like a journal as well. You've got at least 3 reflection questions with each practice. So for day 16, go the extra mile. Very, very simple. Question number 1, how did you go the extra mile today? Like, what did you do? Reflect on that. And question 2, how did you feel during that practice and afterward? And question 3, what kind of ripples might this create, right? It is very much a practice and a journey of possibility and of empowering the reader to imagine the possibilities that they can create, right? Those ripples that they can make. And it seems small, but I'm living proof. Like I promise you that it's those small changes that really lead to massive change.
Let me ask you your opinion on this. As you're describing the book, I'm saying to myself, here's an idea, and that is to go through the book. Do you recommend it with somebody else? Can it be done that way? Two
Absolutely.
people comparing and contrasting their experiences. Do you know any people who are doing that?
I haven't heard of too many people doing that yet. I've heard of people going through some of the practices with their families. So yes, in that sense, with their children, one trying to integrate them into a classroom, which I think is fantastic. But absolutely, I mean, there's if you're doing a book club, or if you just want sort of an accountability partner, this is a great tool for that, because you've got that framework, that structure, and then you're bound to have 2 different experiences because you're different individuals. You can compare and contrast, because one person could take going the extra mile, and it would look like taking the stairs, or it would look like literally running a mile. And one person, maybe they're going above and beyond for their partner, right, to salvage a relationship, or to build a new one, or to help a stranger or a colleague. Like, there's so much room for the interpretation that's a beautiful part of the human experience.
And that's also where I love your questions, because they would be fun to also discuss with somebody else. That you go through the experience and what it means to them or to you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you another one that you're kind of alluding to here, but you talk about creating a process, day 84, and
Okay.
that's kind of, I think, what you're alluding to, that to make this intentional, to make this happen, it just doesn't happen automatically. You have to kind of give it some thought to it, I guess. So talk about that step or that day.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So creating a process, and again, this is the section, the occupation section, which is really about how you're spending your time and energy. If you're managing those resources as in a way that helps you pursue your goals. So that's the context in which this day is presented. And it really just talks about identifying the steps in your process, right? Like starting out with, what is the result that you want to achieve here? Why is that important to you? It's so fascinating. I talk to so many people in the work that I'm doing, either related to mindfulness or intentional productivity, right? Working with your time and resources. And it's like there's this obsession sometimes with, I want to do more in less time. Everything must be streamlined. It must be more efficient. And we often get caught up in this obsession with efficiency that we forget about effectiveness, right? That it's not necessarily beneficial or productive to make more efficient the things that aren't really all that important, right? That's actually not more productive.
You,
And
you
it's
mean I don't have to answer every email every morning first thing at
no,
7
it's
o'clock?
goodness. You don't. You don't. And you can, you know, if that's something that's important to you, you can have templated responses, you can have an assistant. There's so many ways to do things. There's no one right path or formula or blueprint. So with creating a process, it's about doing what's going to work for you, right? And what aligns with your priorities, your values, your mission. Like for me, I'm not I'm active on social media in terms of posting, but I don't follow anyone. I don't have it on my phone. Like I use it as a business tool, and that's for a number of reasons. But it's tough because sometimes you're told this is the way you do it. This is how you build a business. This is how you connect with others. And this is how you do it. But it's not necessarily the only way, right? And so having 108 processes here, or practices that help you create your own process, I think is a really important thing for me to be able to give the world, especially right now in this bizarre, uncertain time, as most times are in their own way. Just to say, to give you permission to say, okay, this is actually what I want, and I have the power to create a process that's going to get me there and allow me to take those steps in my own, you know, meaningful and unique way.
And the key, as you just said there, is it has to work for the person as opposed to for you as the author. You know, that what you do means nothing to me unless I can get it to work for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm totally excited when people, they take a process, you know, or a practice, and they tell me, hey, I love this practice. Here's how I did it. And it looks completely different than the suggested practice. Or even people who email me or they contact me and they're like, I love the book. Here's my definition of mindfulness. And it actually varies from the definition, you know, that's specific to the book or a specific practice. And I say, that's fantastic. You know, these are like kind of gaps that we're bridging, and we're all coming up with our own unique definition. And maybe there's a shared vision, and that's a bonus. But it is definitely like in the subtitle, right? It's to empower yourself and transform your life. And that's something that we all have the power to do and the responsibility to do for ourselves.
And I love how you write about it. You, as you describe it, you said, here are some suggestions or steps you might include in the process. And you get, but what's good, you don't tell people how to do it. You say, consider, for example, organize your email into folders, or unsubscribe. Can you imagine unsubscribing from publications you don't need? But here they are. Do what you want with them. Let me ask you, Melissa, we now have the 2 books out, among other things. What's next in your world?
Well, I mean, I'm recognizing I'm moving with the seasons, so I'm recognizing that there's a time for everything, and currently I'm allowing myself a little bit of a time for rest. That said, I'm also feeling a little bit more creative again, and with this book out into the world, I'm working on a course that will really help people in the sense of managing those precious resources we've talked about, their time and their energy, in a meaningful way and with intention at the core. So I have a course coming out in the new year in 2021, likely in the spring around March or April, which is all about intentional productivity, managing your time, your tasks, your energy in a way that is, you know, effective and also efficient, but focusing on really that effectiveness piece of finding and clarifying your priorities, you know, outlining, designing, and then executing them. So that's the next big project.
That'll be an online course?
Yes, correct.
And you have to, can you do me a favor? Say yes.
Yes.
The favor is, before the spring or when it comes out, let me know. We'll do another show on it. So
that sounds great.
Because it's just, I was going there, you know, the book, but what a great idea for a course, you know, have people help people develop this. Melissa, if folks want to get in touch with you, to find out more about the book, Everyday Mindfulness, or to find out about your upcoming course, or just ask you a question, what's the best bet?
I would direct you first to my website, melissasteginus.com. Melissa, and then Steginus is STEGINUS.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. But primarily, I would say head to the website. There's tons of information there on me, on what I'm up to, on my story, on the books, the courses, yada, yada. And you can sign up for my newsletter, which I send out twice a month with 3 intentional practices and ideas to help you manage your time, your energy, your tasks, and really harmonize work and life for that working and living by design versus by default.
And lastly, at the website, can they find that information about getting the book, or to go to Amazon? What's best bet?
Yes, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, but if you go to melissasteginus.com, it'll be right in the center. If you go to melissasteginus.com/mindful, there is a list of all the practices in the book. There's PDF workbooks with the reflection questions, so that's a great resource for you. And then there are visual links for a number of bookstores where you can purchase the book.
Okay. And again, it's a strong recommendation, even though you didn't ask for it, but I will say it's a good book, and thank you for writing it. Also, thank you for being our guest this first half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. I'm going to have Melissa's trick I do. I want to have you kind of disappear, and we'll speak to you in time for the spring. Okay, we'll get you then. And as our second guest works her way into the studio, we'll see if I can do that. And let's see there. So waiting for our second guest to come in, and there she is. Hey, Stephanie. And as you get comfortable there, I just want to mention to our viewers and listeners that WPVM's mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides a medium for artists, business community leaders, and nonprofits to share their views on live radio. Listeners are invited to help us, our efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, wpvmfm.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. My second guest is Stephanie Nusbaum, who's an actor, director, you name it. She does lots of different cool stuff. And as I do that, Stephanie, I can have you wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So you want to have everybody's watching you. And Stephanie, I had Stephanie come on board tonight to talk about something called the Shared Radiance Performing Arts Company. I'm really excited about it. She's excited with this company to bring William Shakespeare to the virtual stage with the Zoom Hamlet production. Director Stephanie Nusbaum spent many years with Shared Radiance before moving to the mountains of Western North Carolina, where she worked with local theaters. And the question I ask Stephanie always when I have a guest for the first time, you grew up where?
I grew up in Ohio, Columbus area, pretty much.
So that's an easy question. And when you grew up as a little girl in Ohio, did you always know you wanted to be an actor/director?
I always wanted to be in the arts. I think I bounced back a lot between drawing, any type of art. I was that little girl who would sit my parents down and be like, I have a dance, and then perform a dance for them. So I made my parents were definitely my first audience. So I was always performing something, doing something in the arts. So I actually went to school for theater and everything.
Now here's the question, and I'll come up with an idea for you. Do you remember the first thing you were ever in?
Oh goodness. Let's see. Theater wise, it was in middle school and high school.
I'll take it. What was it?
It was probably the middle school drama club. I think we wrote a lot of our own plays. I don't remember. I did the Little Prince once as a flower. It was a really cute flower.
Here's an idea for you. And I'll ask you about that little flower scene. I don't know, a fundraiser for either Shared Radiance or Montfort or somebody else, but I have this great fundraising idea. I don't know if you've heard of it. I've shared with other people. But one of the local theaters in Asheville should do a fundraiser where everybody gets to do their first production. You know, so for example, when you were a little flower, do you have a video of that?
No, we do not.
But wouldn't that be cool?
I'm glad about that one. That was a rough one.
You say that, but wouldn't that be cool now if you could recreate it now, and you know, a few years later to have this record of your first production? I just think that'd be a lot of fun. That you'd have to do whatever your very first production was. So Stephanie,
that would be so much fun.
Wouldn't it be, you know, it'd only be because most of it's just very short. It'd only be 5 minutes or something. But I could just see people doing that. So keep that in the back of your mind We were talking
Oh.
off the air about, theaters trying to raise money and whatnot. I think that'd be a fun idea. So you were always in theater. You came to the Asheville area, and you became active in theater, the community in Asheville. Doing what?
Yes.
What are some of the things?
I've done a few shows. I spent a couple years kind of just acclimating myself to the area and kind of figuring out my way, and then started with Montford Park Players. It would have been in 2018 with Mandy Bean's Midsummer Night's Dream, which is actually my first show I did with the Shared Radiance Company in Greensboro. So whenever I move to a new city, that seems to be the first show I get into.
Okay. And so you did a bunch of stuff at Montford?
I did. I've done a couple shows there. I've worked with them for 2 seasons, and then last year did my first performance with Magnetic Theater as well.
Okay, which I saw. And that show was what again?
The Legend of Amelia Aldine. It was a
Okay.
fun one.
It really was, though. It just completely caught me off guard. But let me ask you a question. So you're now doing acting. How did you get into directing?
This is actually my directorial debut for Hamlet, and it's on a Zoom performance.
Is that cool? Really? Did you
Yeah.
always want to be a director?
I did. I love delving into the words, especially Shakespeare. I love delving into the words, and I might have a little bit of a bossy pants to myself. So, but I just love the creation of it. I love the creation of being an actor and bringing the character to myself. But the just seeing it all come together, it's like a big puzzle. And I directed with little kids where I did school shows with them. But this was my first like full performance, and I love it so much. It's such a different, it's actually hard for me not to give like direction as an actor to my actors, and I'm like, say it like this, and I'm like, don't do that. So it's really hard stepping back.
Well, it's funny. I'll be curious after the experience to talk to you about what you enjoy more, the directing or the acting. But it's funny because a lot of actors, and I hate to lose you as an actor, but almost all the people I know who become directors say they prefer the directing to the acting.
Really?
Yeah, I think only one person said the opposite. So how do you get into this and the first gig to be directing it? How do you find it or get chosen for it, or was it your idea?
Yes. So Shared Radiance, I worked with in Greensboro. I lived there for 5 years and worked with the company. I was actually one of the founding members of the company. Once everything went down with the pandemic and theaters were shut down, we wanted to be creative. So we did our first show, The Tempest, as a Zoom performance. And it was great to work with my home company, something I consider that place home. So to be able to work with that company in just a fun, and we were just doing it for fun. We were just like, well, we want to perform, so let's do something. And then we loved it so much, we did Julius Caesar, and one of my really good friends directed that. And we had people from New York, people from Kentucky. So the next one was Midsummer, and I just got itchy when I was doing it, and I was like, I want to try it. And so I called Sherry Rayford, who's the artistic director of Shared Radiance, a really good friend of mine, actually a mentor. And I said, I kind of want to direct. What do you think? And she was like, well, name the show. And I said, well, there's only one I would really want to do, and that's Hamlet. So that's how that came to be. I kind of just asked and didn't think it was going to go anywhere, and here we are.
Well, what I give you a lot of credit for is the fact that I think I may have mentioned off the air that I love theater and I miss theater. One of the things I love about it is having, quote, real theater as opposed to just readings, with people just, there's a place for readings of shows, but to actually see a show is a lot different. And so
Yeah.
this production you're directing, we're actually going to see Hamlet. It's going to be produced and acted.
Yeah, every actor will be in their own little square just for safety reasons. But I didn't actually, secret of the trade, I didn't make them memorize it, so they might have their script up. But most of
Right.
them have gone through and memorized it. But it is 100% acted. People are walking. We have a fight scene, which
Oh, really?
was
Oh.
crazy to do. Also, Jared Schultz, a local actor, was actually my fight choreographer, and I sat with him and I was like, "Can you do this for me? Because I am racking my brain." So he did a really cool hand fight scene, and it worked out really well. So I'm just very blessed to have such wonderful actors who are willing to go anywhere and everywhere and just try. And that's what makes it so special.
And we'll mention Jared because I'm so excited to see him, because I think, first of all, he's just, I don't know, have you ever seen him act?
I've worked with him a couple times. That's how we met. We went at Montford.
Magnificent actor, great in the stage scenes and the fighting scenes. And my all-time favorite one, I think he was in the one, did you see the one about the movie, that the Kung Fu movie? Or
the action? No, I missed that.
Oh, yeah. He was so good in it. And through a fight scene, I'm anxious to see this on Zoom. I've never seen it, but if Jared is, involved in it, I'm sure it's going to be good. How many people do you have acting in this?
We have a cast of 13.
Pretty ambitious, so. Yeah. And how do you go about getting your cast?
We put a audition notice up, and a few of the actors who've been in it before have actually shared it. So I have, out of the 13 actors, Jared is the only one I have physically acted with on stage. A handful of them I've done Zoom productions with, but we have one that was in Indiana for a while and one that was in the Raleigh area. We have some Greensboro, some Asheville. So it's been such a wonderful experience to have people I never would have had a chance to work with, or in previous productions, actors that I've worked with before that possibly wouldn't have gotten a chance to work with again, just because it's a virtual platform. So you're at home, you can do it from anywhere.
How many people came out for the play? Did you have a lot of auditions?
For the auditions, yeah, I think I ended up with, I was so panicked. I had such like a panic attack. I was like, no one's gonna show up, no one's gonna show up, I was like texting Sherry, the artistic director. I'm like, no one's showing up. And then the last day, I think I had almost 30 auditions. So that was,
goodness.
It was crazy. It just blew my mind.
But it's funny, the two sides, from nothing and people having to beg for actors to 30, which I have to believe is one of the toughest things for you as a director, then have to choose, that especially, and you'll mention who else in the play if they're in the Asheville area, but there's such talent in the area, and to have 30 people to choose from, was that tough, having to only choose 13?
Yes. So I sat there and I wanted to keep the cast smaller. I definitely could have cast all 30 and have parts for them all. But I wanted to keep it smaller because on Zoom, once you get 20, 30 people on there, everyone gets so small. So I felt like 13 was a really good, there's actually no scene where they're all on stage at the same time. There's usually 1 or 2 people off. So I think I have most at 10 or 11 people on stage. And so casting down was hard. I had some people from New Hampshire audition that were wonderful and I loved and adored. I probably tore most of my hair out trying to figure out who to cast because I loved everybody and it was wonderful, which is such a good problem to have.
Right. You go from feast to famine, from 30, from, having nobody to 30 and then having to beg for people, but to have 30 people turn out, that's a great number. Also, I think great choice on your part, because you're absolutely right. When you have Zoom, a lot of boxes is overwhelming. 13 I can handle, I think, a little bit. But the 13 chose, I don't know people obviously in Indiana, but are there any local folks aside from Jared?
I think Jared's the only one I have. I have a lot of Greensboro actors that I worked with before.
Okay, so describing the process that you have them and you've chosen them for the play. How long have you been working on this?
We started rehearsals beginning of November. So we'll film the show on December 6th. So just over a month of rehearsals.
Okay. And so when you talk about rehearsals, how long and frequently do you rehearse?
We rehearse at least 3 to 4 times a week. Unfortunately, with Hamlet, everyone seems to be intermingled in the script. So unlike Midsummer, where it's like, oh, just the lovers perform, just the mechanicals come in. Hamlet, it's basically 2.5 hours, and we're gonna do the first half, and we're gonna rehearse that, and we'll do the second half. So a lot of sitting down for some people, which is harder when it's on Zoom. Sometimes it's actually easier. I've done that where I was a smaller part in one of them, and I was like, and mute my video and I'm going to go get a snack. So it might actually work out well because you can actually leave and go, and you're in the comfort of your home. So we work at least 3 to 4 times, and coming up, we'll throw a lot more in here for our dress. We do dress rehearsal next week.
And the rehearsals are how long?
About 2.5 hours. depending on how long. We'll get into those fun tech weeks and dress rehearsals where it's like we go till we're done. So, but I think the play is lasting because we actually do entrances and exits. So we have our tech director call in everybody. So they are actually in line. So you have Gertrude and Claudius together, and then you have, you know, Hamlet here and Horatio here. So it's definitely a very planned process. So it can take up to recording time, 3.5 hours.
And I think people don't realize that who go to Montfort or go to other shows, you know, how much time and effort is into this. But what's so exciting about it, and I'm really looking forward to it, that's live theater. You know, it's not, it's just, there's a difference between watching that in the film or whatever. I'm really looking forward to this. So it's being filmed, and that's going to come out when?
December 17th at 7 o'clock. We will do a Facebook premiere, and then it'll go on YouTube for later viewing.
Okay. And so folks want to get more information about it or find out when and where to see it, how do they go about doing that?
They can grab us on Facebook at Shared Radiance is the company name, or sharedradiance.org. That has all of our information about, that actually has all the information about all our previous productions as well, which are really exciting.
Now, the previous productions, which is exciting, that they're available, that people can see some of the previous productions?
Yes, yeah, you can go and watch on our YouTube page at Shared Radiance Performing Arts on YouTube. You can actually see Midsummer, Julius Caesar, and I think Tempest is on there.
Now, these are all Zoom productions?
Yeah.
Because one of the nice things I think what you guys are offering, and there was just a big article in the Wall Street Journal about this, that there's a whole debate in theater about filming stuff, you know, and it's a shame that more stuff isn't filmed, you know, because the argument, which I never bought, kind of is, well, you film it, then you won't get people to come to live theater, as opposed to, you know, you film it and you're building up an audience for live theater. You know,
yes,
so
I have that same argument with Cats the musical. Actually, now that you're mentioning it, I just had a total like childhood memory. Cats was my first musical I ever saw on VHS. I ruined the tape 4 times. I had to get 4 VHS tapes because that's how old I am. VHS.
It was the first play I ever took my daughter to. And
really?
And she was scared by it, you know, the actual theater. So you weren't scared. No, well, just digress. Cats, I refused to see the movie because I didn't love the show. Have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen the new one. I refuse to watch it because I have my people. I've seen it live 4 times as well. And it's just, I am so stuck in my ways. I definitely know that we've had some arguments backstage at Montfort about how terrible it should be, and we don't want to. But that's the musical that got me into theater. And I wouldn't have had that experience if I didn't see it on VHS and watch it over and over. I have every dance memorized. I was dancing all over the, you know, living room. My brothers were so annoyed by me.
But back to the issue though. So live versus film productions. So do you think the idea of film productions is good or bad?
I think it's great. I think it's going to give you an audience, but there's nothing like live theater. So I think filming is a step in the water. You get your toe wet, and then once you see it live, it's we talked about Hamilton. You see it live or you see it on film because little chances now you'll see it for a little bit, but we weren't able to see it for years because it was so expensive or sold out. So it gave us a chance to experience it. But I can't imagine anyone that's going to say no to seeing Hamilton live. So I think it's the same thing. There's nothing like being in the theater.
Have you seen Hamilton live?
I have not, but I've watched that musical on Disney Live or Disney Plus probably I wore, if that was a VHS tape, I would have worn it out too.
But just your point is so on target, I think, because as you mentioned, Jared, you know, who I just think is such a magnificent actor, but I missed seeing him. You know, I bumped into him the other day when we set this interview up. I hadn't seen him for like a year, and I missed him. You know, I loved seeing him, as you said, though, in live theater. You know, it's such a different experience than seeing him, you know, on tape. Or the play you were in, you know, now, what was your role again in that?
I was Kate. I was the best friend.
Okay, that was the obnoxious.
I had all the crazy hair.
Right, exactly, it was the obnoxious best friend, you know.
Yeah, that was me.
But it was. Oh, now I remember it well. And that's just such a fun play. But it's just I didn't kind of enjoy it, but I loved it. And she said, seeing it live and seeing Miles Rice, you know, come out of the ground, you know, it's just
right.
It's so different than seeing a movie. And I'm terrible, Stephanie. You'll see when I review your show, Hamlet, that if I know the performers, I I love it. You know, it's just I'm a terrible critic because if I know you, I know you, and you directed it, and I so much want to see it. And I wouldn't say Hamlet's my favorite play, but I'm anxious to see it because I've never seen Shakespeare via Zoom. And
Right.
unlike a movie or TV show, if I don't know the people, it doesn't matter to me. But if I know the actors, I want to love it. You know, so
I'm excited.
don't ask me to
I'm
be
so excited to share it because, you know, just to nerd out for a second, Shakespeare was stopped by plagues multiple times in his life, and
right.
now we are, and we get to move on. So in all honesty, it just sits here as a warming to my heart, knowing that Shakespeare would be, oh my God, I'm such a nerd. I'm so sorry. Shakespeare's like, my favorite quote is Patrick Stewart, who's like, "Oh, Shakespeare's just another room getting a bottle of wine." That's how I feel about him. But I feel so honored, and I hope that Shakespeare's just smiling, going like, "Yes, that's what we should be doing. That's plagues don't stop us in the theater." So it's just, I'm really excited to bring it to action and bring it forth.
Well, it's interesting you say that because you're talking about bringing Shakespeare forward. So the theater company in South Carolina, that's what they emphasize, Shakespeare stuff. Do they do other stuff other than Shakespeare stuff?
Shared Radiance usually focuses on Shakespeare, and they've done a few. We actually, when I was there, we performed a premiere called Serial Killer's Daughter. So they're kind of like Magnetic. They do a lot of original shows too. And Serial Killer's Daughter was a show about Velma Barfield, who was a serial killer in North Carolina. It was written by, actually, she was local. It was a poet who was local here in Asheville for a while and has moved away. I think she's moved up towards the mountains a little bit more, but they focus on a lot of original works and things with meaning. And Shakespeare just tends to be I think we all just nerd out over. We started as a community theater. So we started as let's just get together and have fun and do theater, and then moved into a more professional space just as we kept going. They're in the schools. They actually bring Shakespeare to school children. We've done elementary, middle, and high school with an abbreviated scene show. So it's just a bunch of scenes together to introduce Shakespeare to students. So
well, you mentioned a mutual friend too, Mandy Bean. That's what she
yes.
does, right? She goes into the schools and brings Shakespeare, which is so cool. And she's doing some of it virtually, I think, as well. Do you see yourself on the one play you just mentioned, by the way? I think I'd love to see that. Bring it Magnetic, though, the one about the North Carolina person. Would that be a great show to bring to Magnetic? You know, I don't know.
It would. That show is so perfect for the Magnetic stage. Actually, Shared Radiance is talking about. We were supposed to do it this year in Asheville for a poets competition or a festival, and it got canceled due to coronavirus. So next year in July, we plan on bringing Serial Killer's Daughter to Asheville, and I'll be reprising my role as the killer's daughter, and most likely directing it as well. So that's a big undertaking.
Well, yeah. Also, I'm curious about that too. Directing and acting. Have you ever done that before? Or you haven't really done it before, except with kids or something?
I haven't. Yeah.
So that'll be a challenge to do both.
Yeah. Yeah, this show, it's one that's really close to my heart. We premiered it, and it's something I met the author, and we got along really well. And so it's a show that really, really meant a lot to me. And I think that's where it leads off, is somebody who cares about the show. It's always nice you always know the directors, and you're like, oh, you don't like that show, and we can tell. But when you have a show, that's why I love Hamlet. Hamlet is like my all-time favorite 100% show. I named my cat after him. So I have the big love for Shakespeare and Hamlet, and Serial Killer's Daughter is the same.
As a kid, did you love Shakespeare?
No, I hated Shakespeare. Actually, it wasn't until college when I sat there and I was like, I'm a theater major. I can't hate Shakespeare. This is pathetic. And I took an English class, and it was the professor was so great. He just brought it to life. And that's where I always wanted to be, is bringing Shakespeare to life. Because I remember I hated Shakespeare.
A shout out. Do you remember the professor? What was his name?
I don't. Oh, but he was such a typical professor. He had like the blazer and the bow tie and the patches on his elbow. I can picture him so clearly. I don't remember his name. I don't think he teaches anymore at Ohio State. I don't.
It's one of the cool things, share that kind of information if you're still around, with him, that you became now a Shakespeare nerd as a result.
I need to find him somewhere and tell him hello.
It's a great story to tell. He'd love to hear it. Moving forward, I have to ask you a favor, and you kind of alluded to it. But when this show does come to Asheville, give me, again, 4 to 6 weeks notice, you know, now we kind of know each other, and I'll do another show on it, because I'd love to do a show on it, you know, this upcoming show. What do you see yourself moving forward doing? You're going to continue with Shared Radiance. I assume that's kind of your home, is still your home base, you consider?
I do, as long as I'm on a virtual platform, I can do it. I don't know where I see myself moving forward. I'm just kind of playing it. I think a lot of 2020, just playing it by ear, and whatever project comes up, I'm excited to say yes to. And I think that's my motto is yes, let's do it. So
That's a great, I love that motto too, where I'll say that too. Yes, you know, open yourself up to opportunities. Do you see yourself more going into directing or acting?
I love the acting so much, but you're right. I'm having so much fun directing. I still can't give up acting. I'm such a drama queen. I love being that, like, you know, on stage and that emotion you feel. So I think I'll try to tread the line of both here for a little bit. So I know Mandy Bean's great at it. She does
The
great at
best.
directing,
Yeah.
and I love having her on stage with me and directing. So I would love to be a Mandy Bean. I hope she watches this.
Well,
Mandy, I want to be you.
I love it, but such a talent, such a nice person.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned too, working with kids. Do you see yourself doing that some more too? Do you like working
Not
with
as
kids?
much. I loved it. I just haven't found an outlet for it, but I did love it. I loved teaching drama to kids, and then ultimately helping them perform, which is such a joy when they're. I had one kid who didn't speak to me the first month or two because she was just so shy, and watching her get on stage and say her line bravely and just powerful, and her, like, I'm such an emotional person. I cry all the time. I cry during rehearsals because my actors are so awesome, and so just I cry when my students are amazing too. So I'll probably cry during the show.
You know, me too. Movies, I cry at. You know, TV shows. This Is Us. I don't know who watched This Is Us. We cry at This Is Us. Schitt's Creek, even I cry at. You know, you name it.
I need to see that show. I keep hearing such great things about it.
The absolute best. If you have Netflix, watch it as well. Do you see yourself doing any writing? Have you ever done any writing?
No, writing is not. I've tried. I've taken a playwriting class. In college, we had to, and I hated everything about it. I've tried to write blogs. I'm not a writer. I am more of a give me the words and I'll say them kind of person.
That must be very tough. You know, I give playwrights a lot of credit too.
Yeah.
To come up with the idea for a story and then to put it in writing, you know.
Right.
How about movies? Have you done any movies or down the road?
I've done a few indie films over in Greensboro. I've done the 48-hour film festival. I like it. It just, theater gives that rush of adrenaline when you walk on stage and there's a reaction there. I do movies if the opportunity came up, but I definitely love theater.
So the $1 million question for everybody: when do you think we'll ever get back to normal, or is there a normal anymore?
It'll be interesting to see. I hope that come up, you know, some things are in the brew for, you know, the vaccine and stuff. I hope once that happens, that maybe fall of next year. I mean, I hate to be pessimistic, but I worry summer next year is a little rough. So I would love for summer to be the thing. I don't see it till after April or May.
There's one of the things Magnetic did, and I'd love to see you do this at some point in time. They did a short play they were telling me about it off the air, and it was a 35-minute play, but it was done actually at the theater, and they had 3 actors at the theater. And, you know, I've seen some other shows do it even better when they have a couple, you know, it's a 2-person play and the couple in a relationship or something.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see more of that. I hope you do. To see small plays, you know, with only 2 or 3 characters. But I get the same rush, like you said, I'm watching that play, and I really was into it because I knew the actors, hadn't seen them for a year, and they were actually acting in a play in a theater, Magnetic, you know, which is a great venue for see shows at. So
yeah, it's perfect. I love that venue so much. I love little blocks. I mean, I love the amphitheaters, but little black boxes are really so intimate and fun when you can look and, like, literally, I'm that actor that I love to, like, look at the audience and make them, like, a little bit. So I love the Magnetic for that.
And that's why I'm actually see Hamlet, as you said, on a small basis, as opposed to if I had seen it at Montford with 47 people. And, you know, I don't know how they do it, but they have like 40, they put everybody in the cast, you know, so you could have had all 30 in the cast, deciding that, you know, you don't see everybody, because 13 will be enough. Review again, Stephanie, if people want to see this show coming up, it opens, this show is going to be on, we're taping in advance, but this show is going to be on, the, I think, day before you open. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, we're performing. We're gonna do the watch party on Facebook Live on December 17th.
Okay, and if people want to see it or sign up for it, what do they do?
They can go like our Facebook page at Shared Radiance, and that'll give all the information. Also, sharedradiance.org is a great reference. It gives all the information about the company, so it's really, really fun to see that.
Okay, and if they want to find out more about you, Stephanie Nusbaum, what you're doing, is there a way best way to find out about some of the stuff you're doing, or just check Shared Radiance?
Just Shared Radiance. That's where I'm at right now. So I don't have my own website. I had it for a while, but those are like old pictures. I definitely don't look like I do now, years ago. So, but I stick with the local theater companies right now. So hopefully you'll catch me on Facebook every once in a while.
Great. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for being my guest the second apparel on the BLAINESWORLD show. I'd also like to thank people for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you next week, same time, same place. See you, Stephanie.